Hello?
Hey, Larry.
Holy cow, it works. Wow.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast, buddy. Thank you for doing this. I'm here with my co-host, and he happens to be my brother. His name is Dean. How
Hey,
you
Dean.
doing?
Can you guys can hear me okay, right?
Yep, can you hear us?
Yeah. Everything's fine. Cool.
All right. Thank you for taking some time out to do the show. We really appreciate it. We got a lot to talk to you about, so we're going to jump right into it.
Okay, how long is this? I generally do them a half hour or an hour. Well, what do you guys?
We're an hour show, so we're going to try to get as much out of you as possible in an hour because we're big fans. All right, we got a lot to talk to you about.
Till we annoy you, you hang up.
Cool, man.
So, how did you get into improv? Let's start there.
How did I get into improv? Well, let me think how I did it. I was doing stand-up open mic nights. That's my favorite. Of all my things that I've ever done in show business until right this second, open mic nights back in the 60s was the best. And then somebody told me, and so I was doing, so then I got a manager out of that, right? And then the manager actually it was Woody Allen's manager. I was opening for Woody Allen, and he said, "Let me see." I was like into the critical thinking stuff of Pryor and Lenny Bruce and George Carlin, et cetera, et cetera. Burr is doing it now. And so I couldn't take it, man. I mean, I had cops pulling me off the stage and people throwing bottles at me and coming at me with beer bottles in their fist upside down. Get the fuck off the stage. And I just couldn't take it, man. What?
I heard a story about that you had made a joke on stage, made a comment about God that caused somebody to come at you with a bottle.
Yeah, they started throwing. No, it was an arena show. I was opening for the Love and Spoonful, and so it was an auditorium, a huge auditorium, and but it was the old seats, with the wooden armrests.
Yeah, and
if you hit them from the back, you could get those armrests off. So the first three rows were taking their armrests off and throwing them at me, but I wouldn't stop. And then they finally they ran out. I mean, they ran out of armrests. The fourth row was too far to throw. But they turned the lights on, and then I saw the guys in the back rows, just guys. No girls were throwing anything, but the guys in the back were taking their armrests off and passing them down to the guys in front. It was too weird. And then the cops showed up, and then the cops came down to 20 cops, 10 on each wall aisle, and they both sides, and they came up on both sides of the stage, and they just pulled me off the stage. And they weren't angry, and they weren't badass. I don't think, just from how it went down, that they knew what was going on or why they were pulling me off the stage. It was just the dean of Washington University in St. Louis called the cops when I mentioned the word God the second time. That's when they started throwing things. But I kept on yelling at them, "But you're a college crowd. This is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What are you doing? This is insane. You got to stop it." So they would stop throwing things when I talked to them like that. I would go, no, I want to talk about God. It's really funny. And then they start throwing things. And so I said, "No, stop. This is sex, drugs, rock and roll. You're a college crowd. It's the Love and Spoonful. I don't understand what you're doing. You should be listening to this." And then they stopped and listened to me. And then I said, "Okay." And then they calmed down and everything was fine. And they said, "All right, now I'm going to talk about God." And then they threw the stuff again. That's when the cops came down. The cops are standing in the back because the dean had heard the beginning of my monologue. And I was talking about sex or drugs or rock. I don't know what I was talking about, but he had called the cops then. And by then I had passed on to other things that weren't controversial until I got to the God thing. And they were standing in the back. And when they started throwing things and stuff. And I calmed them down. They didn't come. But the second time they started throwing things, the cops came down. So I called my manager and I said, look, I can't do this anymore. I'm a middle-class Jewish kid. I don't know about this Lenny Bruce stuff. I'm not even doing drugs. And I wasn't. I wasn't doing drugs at the time. I said, they're throwing stuff and I'm not drugs. Because that's what I thought they were. And I guess that's why they were pulling Lenny off. But it was also what he was talking about. So he said, well, why don't you join Second City? You know, they own the theater. They're talking about what Lenny is talking about and what, you know, George and Richie are talking about. But they own the theater, so they'll throw those people out. So I said, fine. So I auditioned for Second City in New York. They had a theater there. And I auditioned. The ironic or the interesting thing about it was I auditioned with Robin Williams. He wasn't Robin Williams at the time. He was just Robin Williams, but he was still wearing the bib overalls and the rainbow suspenders. But yeah, he wasn't famous yet. So he auditioned. He got in. I got in, but we both went to different companies. They sent me to St. Louis. Weirdly, the same place where I got pulled off the stage by the cops. But we were playing in a nightclub, and the owner wanted us there, so everything was fine. And then we were there for we were booked in there for a month. It was just like a nightclub booking type of thing, but we were Second City. But we were held over for a year, so we were pretty funny. And then finally, Paul Sills, who was the runner of the Second City, the director, he came down and he saw me and Jack Burns. Jack Burns eventually went to Hollywood and he wrote Hee Haw. So he did fine. I went up to Chicago and joined the company there. And from there, a couple of us pulled away and went to San Francisco and opened up the Committee and Improv there. And we were rivals of Second City for about 10 years. And then I finally went down to Hollywood and became an actor because the money was good. I didn't like Hollywood. I still don't like Hollywood. I don't like being an actor. But because the thing was, when I was a stand-up comedian, I was doing things out of my own head. And when I was improvising, I was doing things out of my own head. You know, it was just up to the audience and the director to the topics we would follow, but nobody was telling us what to say. So, you know, and then Hollywood, they were telling you, you know, you read this script and do it right and stand over there and don't, you know, bump into furniture and get your, you know, it was a horror trip. It really was. I mean, I was making a ton of money, so you put up with that crap. but then, you know, it just got, you know, I saved up enough money to keep me going for 2 years and make all the films I wanted to make. Oh, well, they were little tiny minute films, though I think the longest one was 10 minutes or something. But, you know, I had enough money saved up where I could do what I wanted to do. And since I was in Hollywood, I was making these little films.
Now, is that when you did the Sometimes Jones?
Yeah. In other words, I did the Sally's Diner. Is that what you were? Well, yeah. Sally's Diner. Well, yeah, I took all my first huge paycheck was Escape from Alcatraz. That was more money than I ever saw. I was on it for 3 months. So, I mean, I'd never worked anything for 3 months except, you know, the Committee. Well, it was 10 years I was in there. But that wasn't the kind of money that, you know, Alcatraz was paying. So I just took the money and I thought, well, I could start really getting into drugs with this amount of money. Or
that's one way to go.
And everybody was doing it. It was the 70s. And the 70s was Hollywood was blanketed with cocaine. I mean, it was all over. I mean, people would be showing up at work with white noses. I mean, it was just crazy. It was just, but so I thought instead of doing that, instead of, you know, just spending it on parties and drugs I said, why don't I do something for me? And I made Sally's Diner and it got an Academy Award nomination. So that kept me going for a while because a lot of people saw it and were hiring me hiring me because they saw that movie. It went around the world, that film short.
I just rewatched that, and it still makes me laugh.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was that funny. I mean, I did it for different reasons. Not that it wasn't funny. It's not that I didn't do it because I thought it was funny. I did it because I had that character in mind, and I wanted to see him walking around on the screen. I wanted to see what that was really instead of in my head. So that's why I did the movie. It was a horror trip to do the movie. I mean, making a movie, if you've never, that was the first movie I ever really made that was a real movie. You know, the other things I would just get a friend and take a little camera and, you know, go off in an empty lot or go down to the beach or, you know, just make a little thing. But that was, I had a crew and and a cinematographer and and a stunt guy and blah, blah, blah. So it was really hard because I wasn't ready for that. I mean, I thought, well, it would just be like everything else I was doing, you know, or off the cuff and hey, you know, blah. No, I finally got used to it because I did other movies after that. But the first time making a movie, a real movie, even if it's 10 minutes long, booking the thing and, you know, getting the location and booking the location and getting the crew together and the cinematographer and the costumes and rehearsing. And it was just, and then one of the days the camera lens was out of register. We had to do a reshoot 2 weeks later and trying to get the guy to, because, you know, the first time the guy we rented for 3 days, we rented Solly's Diner. It was Solly's Diner. That's why I called it Solly's Diner. It was Solly's Diner. And it was it was a block and a half from me. Oh, what were you going to say?
Oh, I said that makes sense.
Well, yeah. So but unfortunately, and he was starving. I mean, I would eat there every day for lunch or dinner because it was a block and a half from my apartment. And I was poor, so I wasn't making that much money at the time. So I was a regular there, and I never saw any customers there except maybe one or two others. Anytime I went there was either empty or maybe one or two others, and I never saw any more people in there. So he was very happy to book it for 3 days. You know, I think I booked it for $350 a day. Which is really cheap for a restaurant, man. But that was cool. But then when the camera was off register and we had to reshoot one entire day, 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, you know, he thought he had us over a barrel because we couldn't go anywhere else. So he started charging us. So, oh man, you know, $2,000. And then he started to give us reasons why. Well, you know, Paramount Pictures is doing a movie on this street, and they want to book my restaurant for a couple of days. So I don't think I can handle you. So it's going to be $1,000 a day. And we said, well, forget it, man. We'll just. I mean, I didn't have the money. I mean, I needed his restaurant or forget the film. You know.
Is that restaurant still there, Larry?
No, it isn't. The weird thing is that I finally got him to just, you know, give it to us for $350 because we didn't believe the story, and he was lying anyway. So he finally broke down. He said, all right, $350. So he did it, and we got the nomination. Well, we had to lock it down before we sent it in to this Academy thing. So when we locked it down, I put a big, I think it's still there, you know, Solly's Diner, and I gave the address and everything. Because I really liked the guy, and he did us a big favor. So I gave him a big ad at the end of the movie, and it played at the Academy with his ad. And then 3 weeks later, he closed. So because no business, and he was from Louisiana or someplace, you know, he had a Southern accent, and he was an older guy. He was about 50 or 60 or something like that. So he went back to Louisiana. So he never, I don't think he ever saw the movie. I don't know where he moved to when he left, and he never saw the movie, and he never got the accolades or the customers that he could have gotten. I would have thought. So that's the way that went down.
So now that's when you were nominated for an Oscar for that, right?
Nominated for an Oscar, yeah, for Sally's Diner, yeah. That's great. It was the first major. It was the only, and no, it was the first real film I ever made. Film short, I mean, with a crew and a cinematographer, and blah blah blah.
So that had to be one hell of a just added surprise there that you were nominated for an Oscar for your first.
Oh yeah, well, it was great, and I did go to the Oscars, and I had to rent a tuxedo and buy my girlfriend a new dress. It was the expenses that you don't know about. I mean, she wouldn't go. She said, "I don't have anything to wear. It's the Oscars, man." Back in the day, in the 70s, this was I think 1980 or 70. I don't know. I can't remember anymore. Yeah, around 79, 78, 79, 80. But there was a big deal then. Everybody went dressed to the nines to get photographed and stuff. So my girlfriend wouldn't go unless I bought her an outfit, a dress, a gown. So I had to buy her one. You can't rent those things. So I had to buy her one. Then we had to rent I had to rent a tuxedo, and then we had to rent a limo. It was just so. In other words, the expenses, I had blown all my money plus borrowed some money to finish the film, and the expenses just wouldn't stop. Buying a dress and the limo. I thought that we were over with spending money. You just go and have a good time, but no. So no, it wasn't. And then we were put at a table. The cinematographer and my girlfriend and his wife. We went to the Oscars. 4 of us, and we shared the limo, and then we got there after and I didn't win, so I got a nomination. So my film was screened there, but I didn't win. So who the fuck wants to go to something that you don't win? You gotta win. So I was depressed. I just said so. Afterwards, you go downstairs. They had this big dining room dinner thing where they had these round tables where 8 people would sit. And everybody, all the people who had been nominated, or all the films people, they sat at each table. Mine was a Sally's Diner table, and and then the big major feature films table, and blah. And each one had at least one star at it. So they divided all the readers of the winner is all those stars. They each sat one at a table, but I didn't even know the star that was at my table. I mean, she was some mom, some TV sitcom mom star. In those days, it was TV sitcom moms all over the place. So she had a terrible time. I could see she didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't know what to talk to her about because this was all new to me. I just shown up, 6 or 7 months or maybe a year in Hollywood. I was from San Francisco for 10 years. I didn't know anybody. So the dinner was a wash. I didn't win an Academy Award, so I wanted to just go home. I was done with this. So I just, if you don't win, why are you there? That was my mindset. So second place to me is, oh, you didn't win, huh? Okay. So how was it? It was a mixed bag. Everybody else in the party, it wasn't my party, it was the party. The cinematographer, his wife, and my girlfriend had a great time. But I was totally, they kept on saying, Larry, come on, man. In the limo back when we were driving back and dropping everybody off at their home, at their apartments. They kept on trying to cheer me up, but I was really mad. So anyway, so that's the Sally's Diner thing. I mean, it did me in good stead the rest of my life. Everybody knows about that film, and years later, I can get other films made because I made that. I could show people that and say, hey, I got an Academy Award. So I cashed in on it, but at the moment, my mindset was, you know, the other insult was I think the film got the Academy Award. So there was a double whammy. Not only
do you
didn't I
remember what it
win,
was?
yeah, it was. I'll never forget the producer's name because that's who gets the award. When your film short wins, it's, you know, the Academy Award gives you the Academy Award to Sally's Diner, produced by, and it was just me and another guy. It was all my money, but another guy, I didn't know how to produce anything. So you both. We didn't go up. I mean, the film shorts are just read out and then they show your film. So you only go up for the feature films is where you go up and get the thing.
Gotcha.
So, but our names were, you know, and the winner is, and the producers are Larry Hankin, and oh man, I can't remember his name now. I think I just shut it out on purpose. But but anyway. Yeah, but years later, it was always a great thing. I mean, I'm very happy that I won it. Yeah, but I've gotten other awards for other films that I've done since then. But it was because of what I learned doing that film, you know. And the weird thing was, I'll tell you just one weird story about it that really I think is very funny. You have to show your film, any film short, feature, doesn't matter. It has to be shown within the county of Los Angeles County, to be eligible to even be shown or submitted to the Academy. It has to be shown in a movie theater within the bounds of LA County. And by the time we got our thing finished and locked and color corrected, and no, not even color corrected. It doesn't have to be color corrected when you show it. It just has to be shown. So every movie theater in LA County had already been booked by the time we were looking for a place to show the film. And the way it's done is, what you do is you go to a theater, any theater, the ones on 3rd Street or wherever in your neighborhood, and you just go in and you say, look, I'm trying to get into the Academy. Can I just show my film before your feature? It's 10 minutes. So just, it only has to be shown three days. That's all. So just, you know, it could be in the morning. It could be the first thing. It doesn't matter when it's shown. It just has to be shown for 3 days in a real theater. Nobody was open. Everything was booked by Academy people. And so we were at a loss. I mean, if you can't get booked, you can't get in even. So we searched, and then finally, Harry Mathias is his name. The cinematographer is Harry Mathias. So Harry really wanted to get in because he needed the credit because he was the cinematographer. And he did get a really good job from that. But anyway, he called and he said, I finally found a theater we can get in for 3 days. And, oh, whew, thank God. Where is it? He said, it's on Santa Monica Boulevard. And it was right around the corner from where I live. That was just a coincidence. I mean, it had nothing to do with that. But I could actually walk to the theater to see it. And I invited my girlfriend to go see it. This is before the Academy, before the limo, before the dress.
So you didn't have to buy her a dress for that one?
No. Well, let me be a little more specific. The name of the theater was the Pussycat Theater. Does that ring a bell with anybody? It's a porno movie theater. He had booked us into a porno theater, but it was valid. It was the only theater that was open. I mean, no other Academy wannabe would ever think of going into a porno theater. You know, you could. So
did you stay and watch the feature film after yours played at the beginning?
What happened? I didn't tell my girlfriend what theater it was. She just said, "No, I want to go. So I go, okay, cool. You know, I thought that was really cool that my girlfriend actually wanted to see the film that I had made. She hadn't seen any of it or been to the set or anything. So she was curious, and I thought, well, you know, I'm a proud filmmaker. My girlfriend really wants to see my film before anybody else at this a theater. So we showed up, and as soon as she saw the theater, she goes, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" She thought I had like shanghaied her into seeing a porno movie, like to get her ready. So it was like really insulted, and I said, "No, this is my film. This is the only theater." I had to talk her into going in. So she said, what kind of trick is this? What are you crazy? I said, no. I mean, no, because we were, pretty much living together. I mean, so I didn't even understand her logic. Why would I do it now? I would do it like, a couple months ago. Maybe I would have done it, but not now. So we went in, and all that was supposed to happen was, and this is what did happen, is what they do is in the morning, it was like, well, not in the morning, it was the afternoon, it was the first show. So all they had to do was show the first show, just show my film short, and then the rest of their pornographic stuff. So every noon, and when this was the first day, so it was like a Monday. So Monday at 12 noon, me and Harry and his wife and my girlfriend, Londa, we went to the we go in and we sit down. Now the theater is empty at 12 noon, and in a pornographic movie, nobody goes. It's generally later in the evening that you get the guys in their raincoats. But there were 3 or 4 guys. There were 3 or 4 guys in actually overcoats, sitting very far apart from each other, so you could. And then they're just sitting there. There's like, I think 5 guys. That was about in this movie theater. And then we sat in the back, and she was totally embarrassed. She kept her head down the whole time until the lights went down, and we started. Okay, so my movie Sally's Diner starts. So everybody's paying attention to the screen. Now the opening is a waitress, and there's a homeless guy, me, and that's who the Sally's Diner is about. So you could see the guys getting ready, the overcoat guys. Yeah, because we were in the back where we could just see them from the back. So you see, all of a sudden they start sitting up straight. Oh, waitress and a homeless guy. This is going to be good in a restaurant. He's going to get her on the counter. We know it. We know how these things go. So the thing goes. It's a comedy. You've seen the movie. Okay, so it's playing, and then suddenly a guy in a suit comes in and holds up the place, and it's going to be a threesome. Wow, they're getting really ready there. And you can see, and then but the movie is only 10 minutes long, and generally somebody takes their clothes off within 3 minutes of a porny movie, at least. Nothing's happening, and you could see the guys getting antsy. They were wiggling in their seats and wondering and looking around back at the booth upstairs, and looking around, and then all of a sudden, 10 minutes and 12 seconds later, it's the end. And they were dumbfounded, man. They didn't know what the hell was going on. Are they in the wrong theater? What the fuck? I mean, they just. So we just got up and went, but we were laughing our asses off. That was the funniest part. Yeah, it was really weird. The weird thing was that for me was that Harry, the film wasn't locked and color corrected yet. We just had to get in when we had to get in, and the guy said, "You do it on these 3 days or forget it." So we had to give him an uncolor corrected pencil, a grease marked film. Where it cut here, you make certain grease mark pencils on the film. It's the old kind of editing machines. So the film that they were seeing, not only wasn't it pornographic, but it was uncolor corrected, and it had grease pencil marks on it. Every once, like an X, you see an X go by, or a cut here flashed by, or so they were totally dumbfounded. They didn't know what the hell was. And I was PO'd because they were showing an uncolor corrected film with grease pencil on it. So I mean, the whole trip, as you can tell from what I just said, was one disappointment after another for me, the great film maker. So, you know, I was just uptight the whole time. It was not fun. The result 3-4 months after the Academy and everything, that was when I finally relaxed and could accept the plaudits of my friends and, hey, it was a great film and blah, blah, blah. And I started to realize that, oh, it is a good film. Oh, okay, cool. And then I could enjoy it, you know, and to this day, I really like it. But it was
Yeah,
hell.
It still makes me laugh. So.
Well, that's
so not
great.
not to jump too far ahead, but like I told you the other day when we were on the phone, that Plane, Trains, and Automobiles is one of my favorite movies.
Too.
And so how did you get that role? I love the scene that you're in there as the crazy cab driver. It's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Doobie, the Taxiola guy. How did I get that? Let me think for a second. How did I get that? I think it was one of the hand-me-downs. A lot of directors, well, not a lot, a few. I think like 3 or 4. And I've been with millions of directors, but 3 or 4 really good directors would pass me on to other good directors. They would say, "Hey, man, you know, I got this guy." Clint Eastwood did that with Alcatraz. John Hughes did that with She's Having a Baby, where they call another director, or the other directors call them, "Hey, you know a guy who can do this part?" And they go, "Yeah, Larry Hankin." So that's how I got that. John Hughes. Now, wait a minute. So Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. I don't know if I auditioned for John Hughes or some other director recommended me. I think I auditioned for John Hughes because I was in 3 John Hughes movies, 2 that he wrote and directed, and 1 that Christopher Columbus directed. Chris Columbus directed Home Alone.
Yeah.
So I was handed down to Chris Columbus from John Hughes, and Clint Eastwood handed me to another director for another very obscure movie where it was about a mouse man, about a kid who grew up disfigured, but his disfigurement made him look like a mouse, his face like a mouse. It was supposed to be a comedy about a kid who looked like a mouse, but it never went anywhere. But I was, you know, it was I don't know. But anyway, that's so Home Alone. Wait a minute. Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. I auditioned for John Hughes. You're asking me questions that I've never had before. I have to think this out.
So here's what I really want to know is when you were shooting that scene, how long did it take to shoot that? And were you actually driving that car, or were you like on one of them trailer things?
No. Oh, that's interesting. Why? Where did you get that question? Did you hear that from somebody?
I'm a big fan of the movie,
okay.
Man. This is stuff, you know.
No, that's cool. That's a cool question. No, I wasn't driving the cab, and the cab wasn't riding. That was all CGI, and it was shot in on a soundstage. What happened was the great part of that was, the only part of the cab that I was driving was there's an establishing shot where the cab pulls in to a motel into the parking lot. That was the only time I was driving the cab, and that was the only time the cab was real. It was just that establishing shot of me driving it to the motor, and then you see snow around all on the parking lot. But the scene inside the cab was shot on a sound stage with me and John Hughes, John Candy, and Steve Martin and me, and some crewmen who were running past with bushes and lights. They would run around the cab. What they did was the cab was just a shell. There wasn't a real cab. I mean, it was a real cab shell. Just the inside. There's no motor in it. It was just a covering, a car covering. And it was up on boxes. There was no wheels on it. I guess four
Wow.
guys at each end could have carried it around. It was just the molded shell of the cab. And the inside was,
Just the
you
body.
know, really decorated well. The inside was a work of art. I don't know if they show it well in the movie, but that was, you know, I got my character from the inside of the cab. Whoever designed that cab, it was like a Mexican motif, and it was just, it was pictures of, you know, just Mexican stuff, memorabilia, photos, newspaper things, all over the cab, on the ceiling, on the dashboard, everywhere. It was just pasted. Somebody did a real cool job of, you know, Doobie's Taxiola. So that's where I got my character from. And they just had two cameras, one shooting the two guys in the back from kind of the side or maybe the front. There was no window. It was just clear, you know, empty. So one, and then one on me from the side. And John Hughes sat on a wooden box. In movie terms, there's quarter boxes, half boxes, and full boxes. And basically, all they are wooden boxes with an opening for a hand to hold it, so you could carry around. And you order one. You say, "Hey, give John a full box to sit outside the cab." So he had a full box right outside the passenger seat, front passenger seat, and he would give us instructions through the open window of the passenger side, of the front seat. But and we did the scene, and the movie that you see is the scene that was written. It's 3 pages long, and we memorized it, and we just did it, and that took 2 takes, maybe 4 takes, 2 takes on me, 2 takes for the 2 guys in the back, and they just cut it together. Okay, and then so that took like, you know, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to shoot that in the morning. And then he said, "Okay, now we're going to improvise." John Hughes says this. Now, we weren't even ready for that. We didn't know that. And we were all alone on this sound stage. And so what he did was, and this is the amazing thing about John Hughes, he's got an amazing photographic memory that is just unbelievable, man. We were improvising. Now, John Candy is a dyed-in-the-wool improviser. Second City, I mean, you know, he's in it for years. He knows what's going on. I was in it for 10 years, the committee and Second City. And Steve Martin is just an amazing genius. I don't know if he's ever been in improv, but he was the best improviser I've ever seen or been with or on stage with. He's amazing, man. The guy's just open, you know? So that
he's hilarious.
It's one thing to be hilarious. It's another thing to improvise and be hilarious off the top of your head when you don't know it's coming at you. I mean, he just was boom. So we did that for a little while, you know. We said, okay. John Hughes would have us improvise. I mean, he had a mathematical way of doing it. He would say, "Okay, now we're going to improvise. So John and Steve, you stick to the script. Larry, you improvise your part. Okay, go." And we were just hung out to dry. I mean, we had to just go. There's 2 cameras going, all, you know. And then he would get, and then when we finally, you know, herky-jerky our way through but you see, he understood that it doesn't matter the flow of what you're photographing, what you're filming, because they get pieces and then they edit it together. So it doesn't matter that you could go, in the middle of a scene. They just cut around that. I mean, so the takeaway from improv or making movies is you can't be bad. You can screw up. You can forget your lines. You can improvise. It doesn't matter because, well, it matters for the people you're working with. They don't like you to fuck up. But it doesn't matter in the editing room because they just cut around it. And if you're really awful, they just cut away from you and use your voice. Then they photograph somebody else while you're talking voiceover. So in other words, you can't be bad in the film. You can only be bad making the film. But, you know, if you're really bad, they just leave you out. So that's what we were doing. We were, herky jerking around, improvising. Then finally we had flow. We started to see, so then he would say, okay, John Candy, now you improvise, and Larry and Steve, you stick to the script. So we did that for about 2 hours. Then we broke for lunch. And then when we came back, we got in the car again, and he never showed up. And all of a sudden, his voice comes over the speaker or something. His voice was in the cab. We never did find where the microphone was, where the speaker was. But he was in TV Village, 2 stories up. Those sound stages have very high ceilings. They're about 3 stories high. They're like airplane hangars. So they're very high. And he said, if you look out of the cab on the same side, he was in there was just a little room up on the ceiling, and there was a 3-story staircase. There was nothing, just this wall. And then hanging up in this corner was a room with a 3-story staircase going from the ground up to the room. He said, I'm in this room. This is TV Village. I'm watching you on a TV screen. So, but I think what he had was a desk and the script, and he could make notes to write. That's why he was up there, and not just sitting on a box next to the cab. So he was up there, and he had us now improvise totally. No script at all. He'd say, okay, now I want you guys to improvise the scene. Go. And we improvised that about, 10 or 15 times. That's what it seemed to me. But here's the weird thing about John Hughes, about his memory. He would go, okay, improvise it again. We go, blah, 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 blah. And then he'd say, okay, Larry, in the last improvisation, when John said blah, 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 you said blah, blah, blah. So say that. But Steve, you say John's line, and then John, you can say anything you want. You just improvise. Okay, let's do it again. Bam. And then we just, okay. And we just try to do what he said each time. And he would do this over and over again. Okay, Larry, you said this in the other scene. Remember when no, I don't remember. Well, you said this, blah, blah, blah. And then so in other words, I don't even care if he was writing or had a secretary but he had memorized somehow everything that we had improvised, even back down on the floor when he was down there. It was amazing, man. And we would just, Steve Martin's mind was blown. John Candy's mind. How is he? We would say that in between takes. We'd go, what did you say before? I don't understand. Okay, John, what did he say again? And then Steve would say, no, you said that and I said this. And I would love to have filmed what we were talking about while he's telling us. No, I didn't say that. You said that. You said this. Okay. Well, all right, forget that. And he would say, just improvise it again, fresh. Don't forget what you just. So that was the best part of it, So, but when the movie came out, weirdly, okay, here's the end of the story. The end of the story is when the film came out, what you saw, what was written on the 3 pages that we did in the first 2 hours. There's nothing that we improvised after those 2 hours that's in the film. So what happened to all that? He spent an entire day with us, just improvising in this cab. Okay, 2 years later, maybe even 5 years later, I'm in a delicatessen, and somebody yells, "Hey, Larry!" And I look over. I was just having coffee with a friend, and there's Christopher Columbus, and who directed me in Home Alone. And he goes, he just waves, says, "Hi, Larry." And I go, holy cow, I got to ask him a question. No, so I said to my friend, I said, hey, let's go over and talk to him. Maybe I'll get another job. So we got up and we go, and he was Christopher Columbus was having, a delicatessen lunch with his family. And he introduced me around. This is my wife, this is my kid, how you doing? What are you doing, Larry? Hi, this is my friend, blah, blah, blah. And I say, Chris, can I ask? Oh, yeah. So he said, oh, by the way, Chris says to me, by the way, I saw the movie and it was funny, man. That was a really funny movie. So I assumed he was talking about trains, planes, and automobiles. So I thought, oh, yeah, that was a really funny movie. It's one of my favorites. So he said, "Oh, you saw it too?" I said, "Well, yeah, you know, it was released. I was at the cast and crew screening." He said, "No, no, 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 the film short." "What film short?" And he go, "You know, the one in the cab with you and John and Steve." "I didn't make a film short with Steve and John." "Yeah, yeah, John Hughes in the cab, Taxiola. You were Doobie." "What film short?" And he goes, "Well, I went to last year. I went to John Hughes' birthday party, and for the entertainment, he showed this 10-minute film short of Doobie and John Candy and Steve Martin in the cab, the same cab that was in the Trains, Planes, and Automobiles movie." And they said, "He made a film short of that?" He said, "Yeah, it was hysterical." And I go, "I've never seen this." He said, "Well, I've never met anybody who's seen it either, except the people at the party. I wonder whatever happened to it." And I've never seen it either. And John has passed on, so I don't know, but I would love to see that movie, man.
So you still never got to
Never.
see it?
And I haven't seen Christopher Columbus or anything. But
Oh,
there is this
man.
movie that John and me and Steve that I don't know, but Christopher Columbus said it was hysterical, and he knows funny, so it must be pretty funny. So yeah, that's
That would be cool to have that get dug up somewhere and be able to check
well,
that out. That would be
maybe
neat.
I don't think he can show it officially because he didn't get our permission. I mean, that was a separate movie. He never paid us. He was doing it on Paramount Pictures' dime because they had rented that you know that air hangar that you know where we were shooting. That was for Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. You know, the soundstage. You know, Paramount Pictures had rented that to shoot the Taxiola movie for Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. I'm sure John never told them that he had shot a film short also. They would have charged him for it. I mean, I'm sure that's one of the reasons, because it was that funny. He would have shown it. I'm sure he shows it at private, you know, when he throws a party, he'll show it, you know. I mean, he has enough.
I got another quick question for you, Larry. Now, I've watched this movie, but I can't think of what character you are in it. You did Armed and Dangerous with John Candy as well, right?
The crazy guy.
Okay, I got to go back and rewatch.
There was the guy on acid.
Okay,
you know, the guy with the long hair. You know, walking around stupid high all the time. Yeah. What do you have a question about it?
So actually,
I was just wondering, what character, what was John as easy to work with as everybody thinks or talks about? What was your experience working with John? No, Candy.
John Candy is great. John Candy is one of the greatest Homo sapiens ever born. No, I mean he's just John Candy. Whatever you think about John Candy, that's what he is. You know, he's likable.
So he's really my Uncle Buck then?
Well, I haven't seen Uncle Buck, but I worked with him. I've seen him on, you know, Second City and you know, the TV show, and I've seen him in other movies, and he was always in my corner. I mean, if the director of or what was the movie that you saw me in that he was in? Armed and Dangerous.
Armed and Dangerous.
That was the director was he wasn't a good director, and John knew it, and everybody else knew it, and I knew it too. So John would stick up for me because I wasn't as well known then as I am now. Now that director would talk to me a little different, but I found out later that but John always stood up for me. He like, for instance, there was a scene where my character, my backstory was very simple. Kakolovich was on acid all the time. That was just my go-to. So I was doing it, and the director always talked loud to me, never gave me any directions or hollered at me. He'd say, "No, no, no, Larry, you know, go over there. Why are you doing that?" I don't know, what the fuck? What is he talking about, man? Why is he talking like that? And so one time we were all lined up, and this is a scene in the movie. where we're lined up getting our guns and flashlights. And I'm in front of John Candy, and there's one guy in front of me. And the scene starts with this guy in front of me getting his gun and there's a guy sitting at the table handing this stuff out. He gets his gun and his flashlight. Next, I go up and I get my gun and my flashlight. Next, John Candy gets his gun and his flashlight. Next. Okay, that's the rehearsal. Okay, we start, gun and flashlight. For a guy in front of me, gets his gun and his flashlight. Next, gun, flashlight. I get my flashlight. Now, weirdly, and I checked this in the rehearsal, there were batteries in the flashlight. In other words, everybody got a working flashlight. So the guy doing props was very particular and very specific. Well, maybe somebody wants to turn on a flashlight. He put batteries in all the flashlights. Fine. During rehearsal, I turned it on and discovered this. Okay, fine. So now we're shooting the first take, and I get my flashlight, and immediately before I leave the table, so I'm on camera, I turn the flashlight on, stare into the light, and walk away with that. No. So the director and John Candy comes up, and before John Candy gets his flashlight and his gun, the director yells, "Cut!" Really angry. And he walks up to me and he says, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm looking into the light of the flashlight." And he goes, "Why? Why are you doing that?" I said, "Because I'm on acid." And he goes, "No, don't do that." No, I didn't say I'm on acid. What I said was, "It's funny." That's what I said. It's funny. And he said, "Well, it's not funny. Just don't do that." "Okay, let's do it again." I said, "It is funny." And he said, No, it's not funny. Just don't do that, okay?" And I said, "But it's funny." And he said, "I told you, don't do." And now everybody's standing around. He's not talking as stridently as I'm telling it to you. This is my memory, but he was he was that angry. He just didn't want to yell in front of everybody. But he was very, "Don't do that. It's not funny." And John Candy goes, "Excuse me, it is funny." That's what he said. It's just like that. "Excuse me, it's funny." And he turns to John, he said, "No, it isn't." And John said, "I'm telling you, that's funny." And he said, "I don't care if it's funny or not. I don't want him to do it. Let's just continue with this shoot. Places, take 2." And everybody gets in their places.
So he argued with John Candy over what was funny?
Because that's how bad a director he was.
Wow.
And everybody knew it. I mean, you don't tell John Candy what's funny.
Wow.
No. Or Steve Martin. No. Or me. Fuck you.
Yeah. So, no.
I love that.
So,
that's great.
So we all line up because he's the director, and all right, we all said our piece. We all argued. You do what the director says. I mean, that's you got to do that. I mean, no kidding around. So we all line up. We're going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And everybody says, "All right," and just before he says "and action," the cinematographer, who's in that movie, he is a big deal cinematographer. They hired one of the best cinematographers in the business. Can't remember his name now, but he had weight. He knew his, and he says, "Hold it, stop, just a second." That's a cinematographer saying that. And the director goes, "What? What now? What?" And he says, "Wait a minute, Kolovich." Oh, right. The scene was going on, and I didn't look into the flashlight. And he let the scene run, and then he said, moving on, and the director and the cinematographer said, "No, wait a minute. Why didn't Larry turn on the flashlight and look into it?" That's the cinematographer said that. And the director said, "Because it's not funny. We're moving on." And the cinematographer, we've never seen this. It just blew everybody's mind. The cinematographer actually said, "It's funny. Let's do it one more time." I mean, that's unheard of, man. And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We should do it again." And he said, "It's not funny. We're moving on." And so the cinematographer called the director over to the side. I could hear it. I wanted to hear what he was going to say. And what he said was, give me this one take, but let me do it my way, please. And this is a cinematographer talking to the director, and the director was not, he hadn't directed that many movies, maybe one or two, and it was an explosion movie. I mean, he knew nothing about comedy. We were all talking about that, about why is he directing this movie? All he's done was direct explosion movies. He knows nothing about comedy. I mean, we said this before all this went down. We were talking about the director, and he doesn't have a sense of humor. So the cinematographer said, just let me do it one more time. So the guy said, okay, because I mean, he was a beginner kind of director, and this guy had savvy, this cinematographer. He pulled his weight and he got his way. So he said, all right, Larry, the cinematographer, is now directing the scene. Larry, just look into the flashlight again. And then he says, the cinematographer says, can I have all my crew who are not working on this particular shot? I want you to gather around the set, please. He made this big announcement. Everybody was wondering, because there's a lot of extras around for that show. So all the crew members who weren't, working on this set, on this particular shot, they gathered around the set, and then nobody knew what was going on. Now it was up in the air. I mean, nobody knew why this cinematographer was directing this scene and directing Larry. She says, okay, we're going to just shoot this scene. I want everybody just to pay attention. Thank you. Okay. And he goes over to me. He says, Larry, just look into the flashlight. Do what you did the first time. Okay. All right, let's go. And action. And I just, John, guy, gun, flashlight, Larry, flashlight, click on, stare into it. John Candy comes up, gets his gun, flashlight, cut. And then all this crew just were holding in a laugh, and they broke down laughing. Yeah. And then the cinematographer said to the director, see, I told you. Okay. And then he just walked away. He just walked away, and the scene is in the movie. That the cinematographer directed is in the movie.
That's great.
Yeah, I thought that was very cool. That's one of the cool moments of my career. Very cool. Anyway, that's the story.
So we only got a few more minutes of your time here, Larry. We don't want to take up your whole day. What is
nothing to do the rest of the day? Let's just stay on.
Okay. No. Well, tell us a little bit about Billy Madison then.
Okay.
If you got a few
more
minutes.
I'll make it quick. I didn't have any fun on that at all. I didn't like it.
Really?
It was awful working for Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler is a funny guy, but we have two totally different senses of humor. He is a prank guy. I don't like pranks at all. I'll punch you if you pull a prank on me. And I'll fuck up something of yours. So don't try it. So that was my attitude back then. But that's all he did was prank people, and then that thing, that laugh, that's a prank. He pulled that on me on camera, and I did it. He called me over.
The weasel laugh?
What laugh? Yeah.
The weaselly laugh?
That's the reason.
Yeah.
I mean, now, have you seen Uncut Gems, his new movie?
Yeah.
I thought he was. You have seen it? Yeah, I thought he was great in it. I really admired him. I thought it was a great job, Uncut Gems. He was up for an Academy Award. I don't think it was that great, but he's a good actor, man. And I respect him for that. But back then, and his stupid movies are stupid, and but that's funny to some people. That stupidity gets laughs, man. And he has no qualms about doing it, and talking like this, and it's just cool. So we didn't get along at all. But one lunchtime, we all sat in a big lunchroom, and he calls me over to his table, and he said, "Hey, Larry." I mean, he admired me for my work. That's why I was in the movie. I mean, and also my friend was directing. So okay, fine. So he called me up to the table and he says, "Hey, what about this laugh that I hear you do, Larry?" Now, I did that laugh in high school. So I don't know how he, and I asked him, I said, "How do you know about that laugh?" And he goes, "The weasel laugh." And he goes, I'm not going to say, but do it for me. And I go, "No, I don't do that. I did that in high school. It's really stupid." He's, "Ah, come on. I hear it's funny." And he's sitting there, and I have my lunch at another table. And I said, "Look, I'm hungry. I want to go eat my lunch. You know, I'm up on the first shot after lunch." He said, No, come on." And then all the people at his table are just like silent, waiting for me to do this because, you know, he's asking. So finally, just to get him out of my hair and go so I can, you know, finish my lunch, I go, "Okay, but I'm going to do it. But can I go back to my table?" He says, "Yeah, just do it." So I went, you know, ha ha ha. I do it, you know, with the face and everything. And he goes, and he laughs, and everybody else at the table kind of smirked. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that's funny. So he goes, "Yeah, that's really funny, Larry." And I go, "Yeah, can I go back to my table now, please?" And he goes, "Yeah, okay, thanks." I go, "Okay, goodbye." And I go back to my table. So the first shot after lunch is that scene. And we rehearsed the scene. I didn't do the laugh, you know. And then in the middle of the first take, right, you know, that's the take. That's in the movie, the first take, the only take. He goes, in the middle of the scene, he goes, "Hey, Larry, this is my girlfriend. Do that laugh." Now, 10 years I've been in improvisation. 10 years. And I've only been in movies a little while, but I know that in the middle of the take, don't screw up. I hadn't learned my lesson about walking out of the scene. You know, if you think it's going bad, walk out of the scene, because then they have to shoot the scene over. They can't use pieces of it. So anyway, I didn't know about that. Anyway, so in the middle of the scene, he said, "Do that laugh," and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm on camera. We're shooting this. It's important." So I just did it. And then that's music. But when and then the rest of the scene continues on to the end. But when the director yelled "cut," I just cursed him out. I said, "Why did you do that, man?" And then and as soon as I did that, Adam said, "Okay, we got it. Let's move on." Because he knew I wouldn't do a second take. So but they had it in the can, man. And if they had it in the can, they're going to use it. And a very famous actor who I don't remember his name now, it was years and years ago in the 60s. He told me something that I remember the rest of my life in movies, and I forgot it that day. But he told me he did that in my scene. I had the scene with this star of this sitcom or this episodic. It was a cop show, but the head of the star of the cop show. In the middle of our scene, he just turned around and he walked off camera. He just walked off set out of, and the director yelled "cut." And afterwards, after we're finished doing the scene, I went over to him and I said, "Wow, man, the first take we were doing, you just turned in the middle of the scene and you walked away. Why did you do that? That was amazing." And nobody said anything. Everybody said, "Okay, let's reset, do it again." And he said, "Because, Larry," and he was very sincere, and I know this is true. He said, "Because, Larry, if they get it on film, they will use it. They don't care, especially if you're the lead. They're trying to save money. They don't want to shoot it again." So I wasn't doing the scene very well, and I didn't feel comfortable in the scene that you're talking about, Larry. So I just turned around and walked out of the scene, which is the only way an actor has of protecting his being bad. And since if you're bad, they won't use your shot. But if I'm bad, they will use it to save money. And I don't want to do that. So I walk out of the scene. So I'm protecting myself. And I've done it several times when I could. When you're just a beginning actor, no, I did it once. I did it once soon after he told me that. Like I think the second or third part I ever had after that scene, I walked out of the set. I didn't feel I was doing it well, and I walked off the set. And man, they unloaded on me. The director, what the fuck do you think you're doing, man? Walking off the set, what, blah, blah, blah. And the writer and everything. Hollering. So I waited about 3 or 4 years before I did it again. But by then I had a little, whatever, well known. And I walked out of the scene and nobody said anything. And I thought, oh, okay, I've reached another level. I mean, it's weird how the pecking order in Hollywood, my pecking order and Hollywood's pecking order isn't the same. I had to learn it, But,
So while we're talking a little bit still about the Billy Madison, and that one of my favorite comedians has a small role in that as
Chris Farley, man. Yeah. Are you kidding? He's great.
Yeah. Oh, I love Chris. Now, did you get to work with Chris then?
No, I mean, unless because you shoot days and different days and stuff like that. So there's a lot of movies that I've been in where they're really great people that I never worked with or met because they shot on different days. But Chris Farley was he was an accident, the tragedy of Hollywood. I mean, he bought into the whole, stardom thing, and it killed him.
Oh, that was one that I was honestly sad. Man, I had never met him or anything else, but I mean that really made me sad when he died.
It was a tragedy. I mean, it should have never happened. But on the other hand, I mean, Chris had this I don't know what you would call it, a loophole or something, that he allowed himself to be led around or allowed himself to show off too much. I mean, he was trying, man. He just wanted to make you laugh. I mean, he was a sincere funny guy. He was a serious funny guy. And he just wanted to make you laugh. And he just tried too hard, Him and Belushi,
Did you ever meet Belushi?
He was amazing. Before he was Belushi.
That's awesome.
I mean, he was Belushi. I met him when he was still a star on Saturday Night Live. I was in a show. Oh, I guess I was in Second City or something. I was in a show where somebody said, "Hey, we're going to a party that Saturday Night Live is throwing, and we're invited." So, and it was at NBC up in the Rockefeller Plaza or whatever. Maybe it was after their show. Maybe it was after a Saturday night taping or whenever they taped. So I met him, and he's really friendly, but he had this Chris Farley vibe about him that I never connected until you just asked me that question. But I remember he came over to us. He was a curious guy. Farley wasn't curious, but Belushi was curious. Belushi had the mark of, I don't know if he was a genius or not, but real people who excel are curious, and to a greater extent than is normal. And Chris Farley, I mean, Belushi was the most curious person I had ever met. I mean, just in that one part of it, he would just go around to everybody. And I don't know if he was on coke or not, but it was, it was at the beginning of his fame. He was a hit on Saturday Night Live. Everybody knew he was funny, but intense. He had an intensity about him, and I guess that went into whatever he did. So it was an intense curiosity. But the intensity, and that's what I was trying to get about Chris Farley. His intensity on the screen to want to make me. I mean, that thing that he did, that dance thing. The Chippendale thing. That's the most amazing piece of. I mean, that's up there with Charlie Chaplin, man. I mean, he just was into it. There was no Chris Farley. There was just that guy, the dancer. But he's done amazing things. You got to give it to him. But you got to watch out when you get to Hollywood. Just watch out. I remember one time, in the 70s, I was drinking. Well, there was this ginseng. So I had a little bottle of ginseng, and I was trying to memorize my line. I have dyslexia, so sometimes I go up on my lines. So I just needed a little energy boost. So I had a little bottle of ginseng. It was in Korean. I think it was in South Korea. But to me, the writing on the bottle was Korean. So I just took a little step, boom. And all of a sudden, man, the director of the scene that I was in, TV show, came over to me and he said, "All right, give me that." I didn't even know where it came from. I must have been watching me from behind. But he just walked over and he said, "Give me that." I go, "Give me what?" "That bottle." I mean, he was really demanding. And then I looked around and everybody on the set was watching him demand this bottle from me. And I said, "It's ginseng." He said, "Give it to me." And I gave it to him, and he looks at it, and he looks at the bottle, and he holds it up to everybody who was staring at him. He said, "It's just ginseng." And he hands it back. He says, "Okay." And he walked away. I mean, that's how into cocaine everybody was. Everybody was watching everybody else. It was amazing. Weird. Hollywood is weird. Go for it.
You got time for one more, Larry?
Yeah.
All right. What do you got for him, Dean?
Well,
hit me with the best shot.
All right. Well, actually, since we were talking about drugs and that, I do have something I wanted to ask you about. Because I heard that there was a story with you and Howard Hessman, who claims that he took you on your first acid trip.
That might be right. My first acid trip? No, I think it was my most expansive acid trip. Yeah, we went all the way through Sausalito and the North Beach and another Alameda County. Yeah, that was a big trip. We painted refrigerators. We went into the ocean. Yeah, we were all over. It was the height of hippiedom. We had long hair. We were painting people. We were somewhere in Sausalito where hippies were. Where everybody was on acid. I remember walking down a road, and we saw 5 people painting an old icebox refrigerator. The white ones. About an 1850 or 60 refrigerator, and they were painting it. And they were all hippies, dressed in hippie stuff, and they had hippie long hair, and they had the beads and the tie-dye shirts and the tie-dye jeans and everything. And they were just painting it different colors. Everybody had a different color paintbrush, and they were just painting this white thing. So we walked over to it. We were high on acid, and we walked over, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're painting this refrigerator." "Wow, man, how come?" He said, "We're all on acid." And I said, "Hey, so are we." I said, "Okay, well, you want to grab a brush?" And I said, "No, we're going down there. We're going to the water." So he said, "Okay, bye." So we walked down. Oh, I think it was at the beach. I don't know. I just remember they're painting. We went down to the water, and then I went swimming. And then Howard was wondering. It was getting to be dark. It was around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I mean, not dark, but late. We had to get back. And there was a whole ritual, to not have a relapse, or a flashback, as they used to. There's a whole ritual of coming down when you're finished, when you're off the high thing. You come down and there's a way out. And we were into all that stuff. So, vitamin C and fruits and calming and, music and stuff. I mean, you go out there and you trip, and then you come down. There's 2 parts. You don't just do acid. I mean, we were experts at it by then. So, and there were in the newspaper, in the Examiner, or the Chronicle, there was also a doctor called Dr. Hip. I think that was his nomenclature at the time, nom de plume, Dr. Hip, and he would explain how to come down from acid. And he had a column once a week where you write in. You say, "Hey, I'm too high, or I got a flashback, or what should I do with this drug, or did I take too much, or what's the dose, or what should I stay away from?" And he would give you advice. It was all through the 70s and 80s and 90s. And so we were all tuned into him, and he used to come to see the show. So we knew all the trappings of doing LSD the right way. But people would, get crazy high and not know how to come down. And that was like, it was weird. Wavy Gravy? You ever hear of Wavy Gravy? No. Wow, man.
No.
You don't know anything about the 60s. Well, you could. So the saying is, if you don't remember the 60s, you were there. So you probably were there and don't remember it. You're probably high on acid. So good for you guys. So Wavy Gravy was the spokesperson for if Dylan owned the 60s, Wavy Gravy was the spokesman for the 60s. He did all kinds of drugs and acid and stuff like that. He's still alive today and he teaches school now, his own school. He has his own school now. But at Woodstock, Wavy Gravy worked the come down tent. If you were high on acid and just too crazy, man, they took you to the come down tent, to the Wavy Gravy tent at Woodstock. So that's how big he was. No, because
they don't have those
takes
now.
acid anymore. What you get is not acid anymore. We had pure acid then. Now it's crap, man. I wouldn't take acid if you paid me. I just wouldn't. So I stopped that a long time ago. So that's why I can talk about it. So when you got too high, you were taken to the Wavy Gravy tent. But in the gravy, this is how into it he was with Dr. Hip. When you got to the Wavy Gravy tent, all they did was sat you down in a 1955's kitchenette. That's what they built. Wavy Gravy knew acid so well that what he had shipped to Woodstock in this tent was a replication of a 1955 kitchenette. The tubular, the aluminum with the Formica table, with the Formica stuff, and the stove, and the teapot, and the chairs, and the curtains, the whole thing. It looked exactly like a 1950s. And they sat you down. If you're too high on acid or whatever, they sat you down and they fed you vitamin C and fruit and things to cool you out and played music. But he was so into it and I never knew this, but the thing was that part of being on acid is it takes you to another place in your head, but another place. And when you lose contact with this place, that's when you get scared. When you don't remember that this is the reality and you're tripping. Most experts know both places. So they remind you. It was just that simple. They sit you in a 1955 situation where all you see is 1955. And it calms you out. That's such a great piece of figuring it out, because basically what acid taught me is just, hey man, figure it out, no matter what. That's all. Just figure it out. You got enough brain cells in your head to outfox the stupidity. Just figure it out. Sit down, calm down, and it may take you a year. It took me 5 years to figure something out. I have dyslexia. So I just took off, and it really interrupts my life until, I took off some time, where I just sequestered myself, and I figured it out, how to get around it, not how to cure it. You can't cure it, but you can get around it, if you just take a couple of steps and, just like sitting down in a 1950. So the point I took away was you don't have to necessarily rely on drugs to get you down from drugs. There are many ways, and Wavy figured out the simplest and most direct and non-bustable way of getting you down, so yeah.
The psychology behind his method is awesome.
But he's an awesome guy. I mean, he owns I would say offhand, just from my point of view, that Wavy owns the 60s as much as Dylan does. Dylan said another great thing, though. He said this a couple of years after the 60s were over. So somebody said, "Oh man, you know," somebody was trying to interview him, and he said, "You know, come on, man, would you do the interview?" And he said, no, man, I'm through with that." He said, no, man, you own the 60s. He says, "I own the 60s. Okay, I'm giving it to you. It's your 60s now." Yeah, I mean, that was a curse to him. You know, that nomenclature, that nom de plume. "I own the 60s." Bullshit, you know. But Wavy is on the same level as far as association with the 60s. You know, everybody knows Dylan and Wavy, I guess, you know. But he used to be in the committee, Wavy. I mean, we used to improvise with him. He was, I can't remember his name before then. Hugh Romney. He was Hugh Romney. He was a poet. I knew him from the I knew him from the 60s,
really?
from the grillage, from the village when I was doing open mic nights. It was Hugh Romney used to come up and do his poetry.
Yeah,
with all the other guys, you know, with the Fugs and all those guys. And then all of a sudden, one day he just blossomed into, because he was doing everything in those days. He had I don't know, he must have had a intestinal fortitude of stainless steel or something. It was amazing what he was doing. But, you know, he got through it, you know. Amazing guys. Okay, guys, I got to get out of here. Thank you very much. This is a trip. Well, so what's going to happen?
All right, Larry. I hope that you.
Yeah.
I hope that you enjoyed being here. I hope you enjoyed, you know, doing the show. We'd love to have you back in a few months and maybe talk about the TV stuff that you've done. Because, like I said, we knew we weren't going to have enough time to cover everything we wanted to talk about.
Call me and I'm there. You guys are great. You're really great. Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Larry. We appreciate it, buddy. You stay safe.
One thing more.
Have a great one.
TheRealLarryHankin.com. That's my website. And what's going to happen with this? Where is it going to play?
This will play on Anchor FM. That's our main platform. Spotify. Basically anywhere that you can hear a podcast at. Just search Secret Stories from the Underground and it'll pop up. This episode will be out in about a week and a half, Larry.
Cool. Okay, great, guys.
I sure will, bud.
Wonderful. Okay. You too.
Take care, Larry.
Be safe, bud.